Thank you for joining us for this, our Good Friday service. It is a service of worship, but I believe you will find the service somewhat different from the usual. However, it is our hope and prayer that you will find it most meaningful. The Lenten journey for us at Eastminster has been a time of preparation and spiritual discipline. And now, as we have passed through Maundy Thursday, we find ourselves on the eve of Jesus' death. We have designed this service to include 6 important events that occurred on that day, and in fact, frame the events of that first Good Friday. These events are all critical elements of the last day of Jesus' life and his final journey to the tomb. So we invite you to experience these events through what you see, what you hear, and even what you can imagine. These events are very familiar, but I want to encourage each of you to carefully watch and listen as if these encounters with Jesus are being spoken to you for the very first time. One important thing to remember is that in the Gospel of John, Jesus explained that no one could take his life from him. He assured his disciples then, and he assures us today, that he was the one, the only one that could lay down his life and then take it up again. Remember this and consider the manner in which Jesus was in fact in control of all those events that occurred on that Friday. Also, we need to be reminded of the prophecy of Isaiah, as Jesus was wounded for our transgression, bruised for our iniquities. Understand the agony he suffered, the pain he endured, and the burdens he bore. See clearly how Jesus, the Good Shepherd, gave his life for you and me and all who will receive him as Lord. You see, central to the power of the cross and the resurrection is that not only did Jesus give it all, he gave it all as a gift of life. So now we begin, hearing words from the Gospel according to Matthew, hearing a story about Mary, sister of Martha, as she brings to Jesus a precious offering and thereby setting into motion the events of that first Good Friday. Let us worship God. When Jesus was at Bethany, a guest of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him as he was eating dinner and anointed him with a bottle of very expensive perfume. When the disciples saw what was happening, they were furious. "That's criminal," they cried. "This could have been sold for a lot of money and handed over to the poor." When Jesus realized what was going on, he intervened. "Why are you giving this woman a hard time? She has just done something wonderfully significant for me. You will have the poor with you every day for the rest of your lives, but not me. When she poured the perfume on my body, what she really did was anoint me for burial. You can be sure that wherever in the whole world the message is preached, what she has done is going to be remembered and admired." Then is when one of the 12, the one named Judas Iscariot, went to the high priest and said, "What will you give me if I hand him over to you?" They settled on 30 silver pieces. He began looking then for just the right moment to hand him over. The Jews were required under the law of Moses to celebrate the Passover every year to remember the Exodus from Egypt. The Last Supper, which Jesus ate with his disciples, was a Passover meal. Many elements in the ritual of the Passover meal was a reminder of great sacrifice and freedom of the Jewish people. But this night was different because it pointed toward an expected Messiah who would rescue all people not from slavery in Egypt, but from slavery to sin. We now remember the words of Paul the Apostle. For I pass on to you what I received from the Lord himself. On the night when he was betrayed, the Lord Jesus took some bread, gave thanks to God for it. Then he broke it in pieces and said, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he took the cup of wine after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood. Do this in remembrance of me as often as you drink it. For every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are announcing the Lord's death until he comes again." They went to an olive grove, a garden. It was called Gethsemane. And Jesus said, "Sit here while I go and pray." He took Peter and James and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. And he told them, "My soul's crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here, keep watch for me." He went on a little further and fell to the ground. He prayed that if it were possible, the awful hour awaiting him might pass him by. "Abba, Father," he cried, "everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then he returned and found the disciples asleep. He said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to the temptations. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Then Jesus left them again and prayed the same prayer as before. When he returned to them, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open, and they didn't know what to say. When he returned to them the third time, he said, "Go ahead, sleep. Have your rest." But no, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. After Jesus' trial and subsequent flogging, and before he was crucified, the Roman soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews!" While a crown of thorns was exceedingly painful, the crown of thorns was more mockery than it was about the pain. Here was the King of the Jews being beaten, spit upon, insulted by presumably the low-level Roman soldiers. The crown of thorns was the finalizing of their mockery, taking a symbol of royalty and majesty, a crown, and turning it into something painful and degrading. For us today, the crown of thorns is a reminder of two things. First, Jesus was and is indeed a king. One day, the entire universe will bow to Jesus as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. What the Roman soldiers meant as a mockery was in fact a picture of Jesus' two roles. First, suffering servant. Second, conquering Messiah. And also Jesus was willing to endure the pain, the insults, the shame, all on our account. The crown of thorns and the suffering that went with it are long gone. But we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor. Along the way, they came across a man named Simon, who was from Cyrene, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. And they went out to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. The soldiers gave Jesus wine mixed with bitter gall, and when he had tasted it, he refused to drink it. After they had nailed him to the cross, the soldiers gathered and gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. Then they sat around and kept guard as he hung there. A sign was fashioned above Jesus' head announcing the charge made against him. It read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. The people passing by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. "Look at you now," they yelled. "You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well then, if you are the Son of God, save yourself and come down from that cross." The leading priests, the teachers of religious law, and the elders also mocked Jesus. "He saved others," they scoffed, "but he can't save himself. So he is the King of Israel? Is he? Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusted God, so let God rescue him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Some of the bystanders understood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, holding it up to him on a reed for him to drink, but the rest said, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah comes to save him." Then Jesus shouted out again, and he released his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, rocks split apart, tombs opened, bodies of many men and women who had died were raised from the dead. The Roman officer and the other soldiers at the crucifixion were terrified by the darkness and the earthquake and all that had happened. But then they declared, "This man truly was the Son of God."